So we are going to talk tonight about hearing God in the silence. I know that sounds like an oxymoron or just a regular moron, but there's something to be said. There's a lot of power in his silence at times. So I'm going to keep tonight really short because I had some other stuff, but I don't feel like that's what the Lord's doing. And I feel like I just want to keep this really short, really simple, because I want you to grasp it. It's really important because so many times we go through times in our life and we're like, where is God? And sometimes, hopefully, the perspective that I'm going to share with you tonight can help you incredibly through those times. It doesn't make them easy, but it makes them tolerable because you understand that there's purpose in the silence. And honestly, I could give you a whole sermon on silence. And I'm not going to do that. We're just going to talk about one aspect of silence. So, starting in verse 1, we're going to just read for a little bit. This is kind of a long verse or a long story. Okay. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, This sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Okay, that is weird. So the guy that Jesus loved, he finds out, oh, what? Oh, he's sick? Oh, well, let me just stay longer then. I'll come see him later.
They want to catch a cold.
Yeah, exactly. Jesus was afraid of germs. Doubtful. So then in 7, then after this he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you want to go there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. This he said, and after that he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of sleep. Remember, everything Jesus did, everything he said and did had kingdom purpose. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Therefore Thomas, who is called Didymus, whatever, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go so that we may die with him. That's odd. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. He's pretty dead by then. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. But Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. When she said this, She went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, "The teacher is here, and he's calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said, "Lord, come and see." And Jesus wept. Now, even though Jesus knows what was going to happen, he still felt their compassion, or felt compassion for their situation. That's a very interesting thing. We think, well, if we just keep a focus on God's plans and what God is going to do, that we get to bypass emotion and hardship, and that's not the way it works. Even Jesus, knowing he's just sleeping, I'm going to go awaken him, he's still he weeps at what the pain that he knows they're going through. Interesting. So the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him." But then some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man also from dying?" So Jesus, again being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Remove the stone." So Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he's been dead 4 days." But Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said these things, he cried out with a voice and said, "Lazarus, come forth." The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Therefore many of the Jews came to Mary and saw what he had done, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. Okay, let's stop there. So we see a couple things repeating here. Multiple times. What is it? 3 different times. Couldn't he have healed him? He wouldn't have died if he had only been here. We can talk a lot. There's a lot packed in there. We could really pick it apart and talk about, Jesus only doing the will of the Father and what that looks like, and what it looks like to walk in that confidence where he didn't even worry because he knew what was going to happen already, and all of that. But what I want to focus on for just this evening is Mary and Martha's perspective. Because it puts us in, when we put ourselves in their shoes in this situation, we find we've been in this situation a lot of times. They sent word to God, Jesus, and told him what was going on. And he didn't hurry. In fact, he stayed longer than he had planned. And so think of it from their perspective. They're sitting and waiting, and they know that by now he has heard and is not coming. So what they're dealing with right now is silence. What is happening? The interesting thing about silence that I find very powerful, really, when you understand what God is up to, is one of the things that silence allows is for us to see and experience a revelation of God that we previously had not yet known. How is that? Think about this. We heard 3 times. They all know him as the healer, right? This is a revelation that they already understand and experience and know. They sent for him. They even said it when he came. If you would have been here, it would have been fine. And then even the Jews standing around were like, couldn't he have healed them if he was here? So they know this. But what they don't know about him is that he was the resurrection and the life. And so Jesus was saying, no. In this time of silence, they get to meditate on who I was, but after I manifest who I am in this case, now they get a testimony of who I am. And so many times that we have in our life, we go through these times of silence, and we don't realize that God is actually preparing us to reveal something new of himself that we have not experienced in our life before. That doesn't make it easy, because we still wait, we still listen, we still feel like we don't hear him. But on the outset, we can know this is God's ways. Moses said, teach me your ways that I might know you. So when we learn God's ways, we have the ability to, at a deeper level, trust and be at peace even in the midst of uncertainty, because we know that he's good and we know that he's preparing something for us. There's intentionality to everything he did. And even in this situation, this story, we see that Jesus had a plan. He knew what the Father was doing, and he knew it's not yet time. He needs to be dead, and he needs to be really dead. So they really realized, like, not only did he just die, maybe he just came back to life on his own. No, he's dead. He's decaying already. And I'm going to show them that I am the resurrection and I am the life. And sometimes in our life, God is waiting till our situations are dead, really dead, till he can breathe on us and say, I am the life. So I don't want to belabor that. That's really all that I wanted to share with you tonight. But for those of you that are going through a season, as I am, of relative silence, it's funny because, you know, even during those seasons where he feels silent, you know, like last night we gave prophetic words. Well, I was hearing God speak, but it's not the same as when he's, you know, in a season where you're really hearing God about certain things. And then there's also times when he's speaking in certain areas, but he's silent in others. And it's probably that in that area he wants to reveal a new aspect of who he is in that area, and so he's staying silent. And I can only stand on that in my own personal job search right now. Relative silence. And I'm like, okay, God, what are you going to show me? I'm waiting. Kind of like Lacey. I'm having a baby in 3 months. I'm waiting. Right? Same situation, just with a different coat of paint. Right? And in addition to that, here's another thing to encourage you. And again, not easy. But as you grow in the Lord, the tests get harder because he's taking you deeper. You know, it would be of no value for a general in the army to do the things that the grunts were doing, right? It wouldn't be bettering his skills. It wouldn't be teaching him more and growing in wisdom of war and of his craft. You could use any scenario for that. And the same is true with us. It's not of any value for us to go through life being the same. He's taking us on a journey where we're constantly growing, constantly being molded, and constantly being shaped into a deeper reflection of Jesus. And obviously Jesus was perfect, and he displayed in this situation perfection where he just knew, like, oh, I'm not going to heal him because then God can't reveal himself through me as Redeemer and as the life, resurrection. And so he knew that. We don't always know that. We're not Jesus. We're not perfect. But we can stand on the promise of what he's told us. And also remember, you know, when it comes to things that we've been promised from him, because we all have promises in our life. And some of them are generic, that every Christian has, that is a promise, and some of them are very specific to each one of us. And yet we see in Scripture the verse that says, "And the word of God tested him until the word came to pass," actually is what it said. The word of God tested him. And so we see this pattern of, here's what I'm going to do, but in order to do that, I have to take you through this so you can withhold that. And that's what happens in these times of silence. The other thing is this. In the pain and the difficulty of certain given seasons of our life, what we find on the outset of them, we look back, and I can say this from experience, and again, it's weird. It's one of those very odd, seemingly almost contradicting paradoxes of the kingdom, where you're like, that was the worst time of my life. It was the best time of my life. It was so difficult, and yet he was so near me, even though the whole time I thought he was so far away. But now I realize he was actually right near. It's so bizarre. But again, just like the Israelites in the Old Testament were told, I believe it was in Deuteronomy, share these things that I've done to your kids, because God knew you are going to, in these periods of silence, in these periods of hardship, you are going to need to go back to what I did previously to remember and remind yourself that I am who I say I am, and I will do what I say I will do. And so then the testimony of your past successes is what gives you the hope for the next, goal ahead, the next mountaintop when you're in the valley. Last night I was reminded of something that John Paul used to say. He used to say the depth of your valley prophesies the height of the coming mountain. And again, it's those silent, difficult times that were like, yes, this sucks, but I want the mountain to be really high, so take me where you want me, Lord. If it's digging a trench, let's dig it. And thank God I've got a community of people around me to say, I'll dig with you, and if not, I'll look at you and laugh. No, I'm kidding. Sucks to be you, no. So anyway, so that's really all I wanted to share. And for how many of you do you feel like right now in your life is kind of a season of silence, where you're like, I know I'm hearing God, but it's really kind of the desert? Yeah, I kind of figured that. So have compassion and encourage people. Once you get out of this, you also gain authority to bring encouragement through that which you've been through. Again, another element of all the reasons why. We could list reason after reason why God takes us through these dark, hard, difficult times. But again, sometimes it's even just as simple as giving you authority. When you've accomplished it, you have authority over that. And you can speak with authority to someone that's going through the thing you've been through. And so that can be kind of comforting sometimes. So in my life, I look back and I realize, before I started dealing with some real difficult stuff physically, like I took my health for granted. I didn't realize how much of a gift it was. I didn't realize that literally it could be taken with me doing nothing. Like I did nothing to have it taken, and it was out of my control. And I didn't have compassion for people who were sick. Like people would be in the hospital and like, someone can visit them, that's great. Not me. I'm playing baseball or whatever, I just had no grid for what it was, And I don't think I had this conscious thought, but I think kind of, if I really dug down, I think I believed that, well, they probably did something to get sick. It was probably their fault, I mean, yeah, accidents happen, but for most people, and again, I don't think I really thought that consciously, but it was kind of hidden down in there. And then when I went through this process on my own, all of a sudden I would find out someone was in the hospital and I'd be there. It changes your perspective. It gives you authority in the areas that you've overcome. So thank God for his silence, and thank him in the midst of the silence for that which he's doing on the outset. So like, I'm thanking God for, like in my job situation, for whatever it is that he's doing, because I know it's good. And I know it's better than what I would have planned myself. And isn't it true? Don't we all want outcomes in our life that we couldn't have done on our own? Don't we want a supernatural life? Don't we want breakthrough and to walk in his glory and do things that we could never do? Well, if we're going to do that, we have to go through these times. Because if we were doing it on our own, we only get fruit that we can produce. And that's kind of puny. I've experienced that too.